Welcome back to Symposium of Wild Hearts. I am your host and guide, Aisha Ophelia, and today I am here with Jator Pierre. Did I pronounce that right? I didn't even ask you.
It was pronounced perfectly. Thank you.
Okay, cool, because I've just been wanting to say it like that all day. Jator is a holistic coach, a vlogger. He helps people with health and wellness, and there were a few adjectives on his site that I really loved, which were explorer of self, curiosity cultivator, walker of the earth, and my favorite, shadow seeker. So welcome, Jator.
Thank you. I appreciate being here, and I'm honored to explore with you.
Nice. So one thing I've been doing in the beginning with everybody is just giving us a second to do a check-in. So the real purpose of the symposium is to give people access to a bunch of different perspectives, experts, luminaries, but really just be able to hone in on their own truth when they hear it in these conversations. So if you can, flutter your eyes closed. If you cannot, just follow my instructions to the best of your ability. So I'm just going to lead us through a quick, just getting centered in our hearts.
Cool.
So just start off with a deep breath. You can sigh it out if you want to hear it, but just notice your breath. And just notice any sensations in the body. And what we're doing now is just cultivating curiosity about ourselves, how we feel, our inner truth, and really what that all feels like inside. And by curiosity, I mean the way that a loving mother would look at a newborn, or the way that you look at your beloved. Just no judgment about what's showing up or how you feel. If you want, you can put your hand on your heart. Just sense if it has any messages for you. Just thanking it for all it does every day. And if you need more time in this space, please pause the video and take more time. We're going to take 2 deep breaths together, and if you'd like to just sigh it out the same way I did in the beginning, please feel free to. So just taking a deep breath in, sighing it out. It's a good sign to the nervous system that all is well. Let's do that one more time. Deep breath in, and then sigh it out. And when you're ready, just fluttering your eyes open and coming back to the here and now. Thank you. That always eliminates my nerves. So I hope it's doing something for people who are watching and for my guests as well. So if you want to find out more about Jator, we're obviously going to talk in a minute, and his bio will be beneath this video. But the way that I've been starting these is just doing this thing. It's kind of like 20 questions, but it's only 11 and it's really rapid fire. So I'm asking you questions, and as soon as I'm done, you're answering. So basically there's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. If anything, it's just whatever's in your subconscious, just let it fly. So don't really try not to think about it. And do you want to play?
I love to play.
Okay, cool. So question 1 is, and this one's a fill in the blank. So men just wanna
have fun.
Yell the first word you think of.
Blah.
Why are you so relieved?
Oh man, breath.
Tell me a secret.
I'm scared.
Nice. Show me your sad face. Say something wise. Touche. Women just wanna fill in the blank.
Have fun too.
I like it. Equal. What are birds talking about when they chirp?
The seasons.
What's God's deal?
Doesn't have one.
What's the last text you sent?
weird emojis that mean absolutely nothing.
Like we all do. And last question for now, how does your heart feel?
My heart feels open and also apprehensive and interested.
That's a good mix. Thank you for doing that. I feel like that's a cool way just to get the energy flowing, and just a nice way to get started. So
yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out if we should just dig right into the conversation. What I labeled it is the masculine matrix. That's just the title. But when we talked, we were like very interested in having a conversation about kind of the surface things that women are feeling around relationships with the masculine or men. And you brought up some of the stuff that you were feeling as a man towards women. We can come back there. I'd love just to get a little bit about you and your story and how you started doing what you're doing with the coaching, and mindfulness is a word that comes to mind for me.
Yeah. Well, my story is learning a lot about the body through the CHEK Institute, mental and emotional perspectives, organ and glandular perspectives, movement. And through all of that, there was still this curiosity for me in working with clients that there would still be aspects of the person's body that were locked up, or posture wasn't changing, or pain wasn't changing, or even the words or the verbiage that they use wasn't changing. And not that it needs to change. Something I was just noticing. And I wanted to explore a little bit more deeper into what is kind of the driver behind how we function as human beings, how we navigate life, how we navigate ourselves, how we navigate other people. Maybe said another way, why do we do what we do? And I sought out a mentor, and that mentor happened to be a guy named JP Sears. And JP and I became very, very close friends through this mentorship. And then as that kind of dwindled from a mentorship and became more of a brother connection, him and I just always kind of chat about this stuff. And my business changed into exploring the mental and emotional realm with people, and what is blocking them, or what their perceived blocks are, or what their pains are, depression or anxiety, or how that leads to gut health issues, etc. And literally, I was talking with my mom not that long ago, and I was saying that I'm simply a person that's just very curious about everything. And I think what I'm most curious about is my own thoughts and my own ideas, and not from an arrogant place of, standpoint, like my thoughts are so cool, more so as, wow, why do I think what I think? Or why do I perceive what I perceive? Or what are the boxes that I keep myself in? And even as I step out of those boxes and then go into another box, and then step out of that box and go into another box. So I'm just a very curious person, and I love to explore, have conversation, and I'm a human being as well. I have attachment, and I have connection, and I have needs, and I'm just very curious about all of those aspects of who I am as a human being. So my job essentially allows me a place that I get to explore myself. The illusion is people are coming to me for coaching. For me, my truth is I'm getting to coach myself in the presence of other people. And that's the coolest thing for me, is I literally get paid to learn about myself and my own navigation of life.
Nice. That's really beautiful. A few things stood out. And one was like, it seems like accidentally spiritual. So you were on this quest to figure out like what makes people tick, and there was a piece missing. And for me, that, like, people can call it whatever they want, emotional, psychological, spiritual. For me, I was like, bravo. I like it when people come into spirituality that way. And also, bravo on talking to your mom. I think that's cool. And bravo on JP Sears. That's awesome. That's a part of your story that I must have missed when I was doing all of my stalking. But what was your life like before that? Would you say that you were in touch with your spiritual side, your
Mm.
emotions before you started the whatever, the coaching relationship with JP?
Yeah, you know, my dad is a Taoist,
Mhm.
so I was raised in that environment, and then my mom's always been into the universe and putting stuff out there. So I was raised in that environment, so I think those seeds were always kind of planted.
Nice.
Um, and then for those of us that are into astrology, I'm a Cancer. So I've always been emotional in terms of my experience of myself, and emotions have never been something that have seemed fearful
Mm-hmm.
to me. They've always been something that I've always, I think, led with my heart more than my head. I've actually had to train myself to use my head because I teach. So I've had to train that very logical side because I'm very, very kind of heartfelt and feeling based and using my intuition and not really. I think science is cool and I think it's fascinating and I think it's evolving like anything else. So I really appreciate my heart and my intuition and my feeling and using that as my navigation system as often as I can.
Nice. Yeah.
Uh,
I laughed because I'm a Scorpio and I have had to teach myself the same thing. So I can relate so very much.
yeah, it's fascinating. It's also been fascinating for me, as a man,
Mm-hmm.
being more heartfelt
Mm-hmm.
and soft.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that's actually really served me well in who I am as a coach, as well as it's also ended up really serving me well on the larger stage that is growing, that I'm on, because I don't think that it's not very often, at least in my experience, I'm not saying this doesn't happen, that you see more of an alpha male style kind of body and look who's also very soft and expressive and
Mm.
can share their emotion. I think that is something that's important to me to share with the world, that you don't have to be this hard, hard person, that you can be soft and that you still can play hockey and you can get down with the best of them, but you can also have this very soft, emotional, available, heartfelt, and not just listening, but being able to hear with your heart.
Nice. Well, I feel like it's fixing to be your heyday if it's not already. So I think that that's like a quality that everyone's looking for more of. So
Hmm.
there's a few things I wrote down, and maybe this is a good segue to some of this stuff. And so I figured I would just start with like the surface thing that I hear a lot of women saying and that I probably have uttered myself. And then we can dig into what's really there from your perspective, and we can see if there's any similarities between like my list and what would be your list. So
Lovely.
one, women often say he doesn't see me. They feel lonely in relationships, even like long-term ones. They've been married. We all know that cycles happen, but that's like a big theme. And another one's, I'm asking him for more, but I just can't feel that. Like he says he wants to do it and he's trying, but I just don't feel like there's any changes happening. So
Mm.
those
Yeah.
are things that I hear over and over again, and I see illustrated in Hollywood movies, and it's like it's in the ethos.
Yeah, can you repeat the first one? I'm a very focused male. I need to hear
Okay.
one at a time.
Okay, we'll start with, let's dig into the first one. So he doesn't see me.
Okay, cool. So he doesn't see me. Um, something when I was thinking about and feeling about this conversation, I think a lot of us, in my experience, tend to go right into male and female
Mm-hmm.
and almost create this separation immediately. And I think that's purposeful. I think it's also painful.
Can you
And
break down what you mean by that, just for clarification?
yeah, what I mean by that is I experience us all to be human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look at us as human beings, there's a few things, at least in my experience, that human beings all need. Acknowledgement, feel like they matter, and to feel safe. And so what's really interesting for me about the idea of not being seen is when we kind of rewind any relationship. One powerful question that I would ask anybody that was in a relationship with another person is, before getting into this relationship, did you both sit down and go over what are your values? What's important to you? How do you want to show up in a relationship? Is work more important than home life for you? Do you want to have a baby? Do you want to get married? Do you want to have an open relationship or a monogamous relationship? In my experience of relationships in general, whether it's female to male, male to male, male to female, and everything else that's out there, is very few of us spend the time to have real in-depth conversation and communication about what's really going on in the situation. So we kind of fast forward into these relationships, and then we get to this place of, I don't feel seen. And what's interesting is that for me, I would guess that the males also don't feel seen, because we're human beings on at a deeper level. We're both human beings, and we both have needs. Males need to be seen too. Females need to be seen. But if we haven't had a conversation around what does being seen actually mean for the other person, and is that something I'm willing to do in a relationship, then there's always going to be this continual disconnect or feelings of not being seen, not being heard, not being acknowledged. Or, we can rewind that a little bit further. For me, is also then considering, okay, well, for the female or the male, what was your environment like growing up as a child? What did you see your parents do? How did you see your parents navigate each other? How was their conversations, their communications? How did they seduce each other? How did they obligate each other? How did they expect each other? All of these things we carry with us, whether we want to admit it or not, at a very subconscious level. And we inevitably move into every relationship, whether that's business, intimate, or other, projecting our parents onto the outside world. So then we get into relationships and we recapitulate the same exact scenario we saw with our parents, and or the same exact scenario that we felt as children, i.e., if I was coaching a woman who said she felt unseen, I would acknowledge that. And then I would ask, what part of you benefits from being unseen? And I think that's an interesting piece that a lot of us don't explore, male and female. How do we benefit from the things that we deem as negative in our life? Not from a logical perspective. Well, Jator, I don't benefit from that at all. What are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. Okay. But we're not talking about logic. We're talking about emotion.
Exactly.
And for me, emotion, in my experience, is very illogical. And sometimes I can get my emotional needs met through, in quotes, negative behavior or not being seen, because it reminds me of moments from my childhood to recapitulate the feelings there, because I haven't processed or reintegrated those moments yet. So I still need it in my outside life to happen again and again and again and again, until maybe you get to the point and say, well, how old am I feeling when I don't feel seen?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, just wow for the whole thing, because if you don't, basically, if you have a faulty foundation and then you come to a point where you feel something that you've never discussed or you're discussing for the first time, it can be an intense situation, because probably by then you've suppressed a lot of things, you're angry. No, I mean, I don't even have one point, not that this was girls against boys, but that was very well said. And thank you.
Well, I think it's also, for me, that's part of the issue, is that it's not girls versus boys. I think that in and of itself is a root of the issue, is that immediate creating of separation, girl boy, man, woman, is taking away our connection, which is human beings. And what do we need as human beings? Typically, we need acknowledgement. We need to feel like we matter, and we need to feel like we belong and are safe. And in relationships, how many times here's a beautiful, for me, it's a beautiful example. How many times do people go on a first date? Let's say first through 5 or 10. And just take the first date. How many times in a first date do people really represent who they really are? Most people hide who they are.
It's a low percentage.
Very low. And why do most people hide who they are? Well, because we're afraid of not mattering. We're afraid of not being acknowledged. And we're afraid of losing this person's attention or having some future engagement with them. So we hide ourselves from day one, first date. As an example, I've done this in my past, so I'm gonna drop my pants here for a second. I've been on dates, further back, and I don't personally want kids. Zero desire to have kids. I never really have. But on dates with certain women, let's say the woman's very beautiful to me. In the past, if that conversation comes up and the woman says, well, what are your thoughts on kids? I've noticed myself in the past skew my answer
to almost a maybe.
my answer will become, well, I haven't met the right person, or I thought about it, but it's a maybe, it's a possibility. I don't want to say yes or no. Where I know my truth is no.
Yeah.
So if we're starting off relationships on both sides of that, it's not just men doing that, women do that too. And we're hiding aspects of self from each other at the initiation. You said the foundation being extremely important. And then we're building from this foundation of essentially omission. Well, at some point, those omitted behaviors, ideas, thoughts are going to start bubbling up. As we move past the infatuation stage with each other, where we're not full of dopamine every time we see each other, we're going to start being a little bit more real about who we really are.
Yeah.
And then that starts to, lead to all of these other issues, inclusive of most of us are extremely afraid of being vulnerable, which means being honest and authentic with who we really are from the initiation of a relationship. So my take is, man or woman, it doesn't matter. If we're not being open and honest from the beginning, it is going to end. It's either going to end in divorce, or it's going to end in an emotional divorce. So the only way out of that I currently see, because I've done it the other way multiple times, is to be upfront from the beginning. Yeah, and if you scare people away on a first date, good, because you're scare them away at some point anyway. So might as well just weed them out and be more real about who you are from the get. I.e., hey, I noticed something in a relationship. I really need to be seen. And what being seen means to me is ... Is that something you think you're willing to do? How many of us are even honest about our needs?
It's true. That's definitely a powerful conversation to have right in the beginning. There was something you said that I'd love to unpack a little more and get your take on it. So when you say there's an immediate separation when men and women come together, because we have our women hat on and you have your man hat on, what to you merges that or makes the playing field even? That was something I was interested in that you had said just a bit ago.
Yeah. For me, what can make the playing field slightly more even, I don't know if I think there's always this kind of ebb and flow going on, but as even as I feel like we can get, is to be upfront and honest about what our values are. One question I invite people to ask is, what do you like most and least about your dad? What do you like most and least about your mom? And what do you like most and least?
Straight to it, eh?
And what do you like? What do you like
Jeez.
most and least about your last significant other?
Okay.
And the beauty of that question is, you're not going to hear about mom. You're not going to hear about dad. You're not going to hear about significant other. You're going to hear all about their perception of reality in those people. You're also going to hear who they are going to eventually turn you into unless there's conscious intervention.
Wow.
So unless we do work, some type of work with a coach or a therapist together and separately, that story, I guarantee you in 5 years, that story is going to be almost identical to how she experiences me. And if I give voice to my experiences of my mom and dad, my experiences of my last significant other, I could almost guarantee without conscious intervention, she's going to become that in my perception. Because it's the stories and the lenses that we see through. And in the beginning, we're seeing through much more rose-colored glasses because we're infatuated with each other and we're hiding. So my invitation for my clients and for myself is, what if we stop hiding in the beginning and dive right into it?
Yeah. Yeah, I actually feel like if we do that, then all the top, gripes of women, not gripes, I don't want to just like boil it down to that, but sure, we'll go with that. Gripes of women, it wouldn't be as though they would be eliminated, but they would have at least been discussed. What makes you feel seen? So if a woman's asking for more, knowing what that definition could be in the beginning could help eliminate some of that, and seeing if the person is even willing to be those things or do those things. That's really powerful. And I love it that you touched on really this idea about what we see in childhood and what we get used to, we create if there is not conscious intervention. And there was something on your website that I thought was really interesting, and it was about the stories that our childhoods are trying to share. I'd love to talk a little bit about that in relationships, maybe themes that you've seen, ways to unpack that, because I think if we can even like take a bird's eye view and view our story as the observer, it takes away some of the sting of even some of the stuff that we've done. So I'd love to hear more about this collective story that's trying to emerge through all of our childhood mini traumas and very real traumas.
Yeah, I think, well, I'll share a story of mine because I think that's the easiest. It's just easiest for me to talk about myself. So something that personally I've noticed in my own relating to women over the years, and it took me a long time to notice this and actually get to a point where I could feel it, see it, and then admit it. And one of those things was, so I grew up in a household with two parents who got divorced when I was 8 years old. I ended up basically being raised mostly by my mom, let's just say 90% of the time. So my mom was a single mom. I wanted to play ice hockey, so I played a very expensive sport. She had a high stress load, working, single mom, etc. Just the story would be the same if I was giving voice to my dad and I was living with him. Stress, work, and raising a son. Okay, so there's these stressors. Now, the interesting thing though, I was 8 and 9 years old being raised by a single mom. And what I started to notice unconsciously at the time was I thought it was my job to take care of my mom. Now I'm 8 or 9 years old, right? So my mom would come home stressed. I thought it was my job to make sure, the kitchen was clean or make sure food was starting to cook. Anything I could do to take care of my mom and alleviate her stress. But the fascinating thing about that is what I really learned in that framework was I'm not enough to take care of my mom.
Wow.
So no matter what I did, my mom still had her life stressors. My mom still had a son who she was raising on her own. My mom still had money issues. My mom, I'd see her either energetically or literally, feeling sad and stressed at times. And I thought it was my responsibility to fix that.
Mm.
So how do you think I show up typically in relationships? And who do you think I typically end up dating? Women who are stressed, money issues, and I feel the need to take care of them and always fail because I'm not enough to do that. I'm not good enough to do that.
Mm.
And then what happens? Well, this is really dropping my pants. Then the little boy in me also becomes very frustrated and angry that I'm not enough, and I start to become resentful.
Mm-hmm.
So then when I become resentful and angry, really at myself, projected outwardly onto my mom or my metaphoric mommies, partners, then I might go seek out another woman that I can take care of and feel the power and the control of I'm back in that place again and I'm actually needed.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a very hard lesson for me to learn around, we talk about why do people cheat? There's so many reasons. But one of them, from my perspective, was I didn't feel like I was enough in these long-term relationships. And I was proliferating that story from one end. Interestingly enough, the woman was also proliferating it from the other end because everything's a co-creation. Mm-hmm. Isn't it interesting? Almost every woman I dated grew up in a household where the father also cheated. So these energetic stories are held in our fields, and we inevitably bump into the exact right people to bring out the traumas for us to process. And for me, it's magnetic. It's like, a lot of people talk about this idea of chemistry. Mm-hmm. Oh, I have chemistry with that person. I don't have chemistry with this person, whether it's male or female, right? For me, what chemistry might be is all of the subtle energy that I carry, all of the subtle energy that you carry, and how does that fit together? And when it fits, and when I mean it fits together so that we're going to bring out our traumas. Mm-hmm. That is where we get the chemistry. And that is almost this interesting way of going through the suffering to bring it up, to bring it process, to move through it, and or to not, and just continue to repeat the cycle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I call that the Venus flytrap, which I myself have experienced quite a bit. You just you just get right in there together so you can work out some of this stuff. Thank you for sharing that. That is, I think, actually a question I had was, when did you become aware of this story, and have you found not total freedom from it, but it's the idea that as we evolve more and some of this stuff bubbles up and it comes into our awareness and we have conscious choice to make about the next time, have you seen improvement in what you've picked?
Yes. Yeah. So where I see improvement in myself, and when I use the word improvement, what I just mean for me is I'm making different choices based on who I want to be today, because I don't want to actually make, for me, it's really purposeful. I don't want to make who I was in the past wrong, because I don't want to shame those aspects of me, because if it wasn't for those behaviors, aspects, choices, etc., I wouldn't be who I am today.
Yeah.
So I look at it more as, okay, you were proliferating a certain behavior for these reasons at this time. And is that who you want to be today? Mm-hmm. And as I grew the awareness of, why I may have been doing anything I was doing in relationships, ultimately, as that awareness bubbles up, then I get to ask the question, do I want to continue that behavior? And what have been the outcomes from continuing that behavior? Mm-hmm. Well, the outcomes haven't been so great. So then I asked myself the question, well, do I want to continue to have those outcomes, or do I want to try a different way?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a weirdo in that way, which is, okay, not in a good or bad sense. Let me try it a different way.
Yeah.
It was the same thing when I used to drink alcohol. I had, many, many moments of waking up and being like, man, you've made some really not so great decisions when you're drinking. And when I took a step back from that, I just saw this list of not so, great decisions that didn't lead to places I really want to go anymore. And that led to the decision, you know what, I'm not drinking anymore. Not because I think alcohol is bad or whatever, just like the decisions I was making in that state weren't helpful to what I wanted to become.
Yeah.
So then I chose a different path to just literally to explore it. What would it be like if I stopped drinking?
Mm-hmm.
And then different things started to open up. So do I want to be in drunk, dysfunctional relationships anymore? Most of me doesn't. A part of me still does. And because I can also give voice to
that
that,
honesty.
because I can give voice to that, what I'm also doing is I'm not shaming that part of me that made decisions like that. Because I don't want to shame him. I want to acknowledge him and embrace him and accept him. Because if I do it the other way, for me, the paradox is he's just going to want to speak more loudly to get noticed, to get acknowledged, to feel like he matters.
Ooh, I love the piece about curiosity. That's definitely a thread that so many people that I've been talking to have really cultivated to just break through to the next level of where they'd like to be. And I love that question, is that who you want to be today? That's a really, really powerful one. I don't think I've asked myself that in that exact way. Almost like some days I'm like living for my future self, but I like grounding it into the now. Okay, I've got more questions from ladies, if you're open to that.
Can I share one other thing that I think happens a lot real quick?
Yes, please do. Please do.
So I play ice hockey. And so in the locker room, this is something that I hear a lot. And literally men in the locker room will say, well, this is the one time I get to play because my wife lets me. And that's a big issue in relationships. One of the big issues is that we start to co-parent each other rather than being partners with each other. So for me, as an example, if I'm dating a woman, one of the things that I'm going to say up front is hockey is really important to me. It's really important to my playfulness. It's really important to my heart. It's really important to my body, my mind. And it's really important to me to go play so I can also show up fully with you. And I'm not going to get into a relationship where I have to ask permission to do anything. Because as soon as we start that permission game or obligation game or expectation, we start to become each other's parents. And as we start to become each other's parents, that also pushes us away emotionally. And also physically. How many of us?
Who wants to fuck their parent? Nobody.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, someone out there might, not me.
No. That statement's interesting because I feel like I've definitely heard that one, never with my own two ears, but like just in conversations or in movies and things. And I don't know, there's like, to me, there's like a little lack of responsibility that's a part of something like that, because that approach that you just said, I mean, like who would say no to their partner having something that they feel passionate about? I think that that's like definitely a quality that we all are learning to understand how important that is, because maybe we didn't know before and we just like totally merged and forgot about anything else. But I feel like that is, who could argue with that, if someone said that in the very beginning.
I agree. And I think a lot of us have seen relationships that are very co-parenting rather than relationships that have two separate individuals who are actually partnered in a relationship rather than codependent in a relationship.
Using co-parenting for that type of behavior like, it kind of hurts, like, to think that that's what's going on, but it's also so incredibly accurate, really accurate.
I love that language because
Okay.
it really brings it to the forefront.
Yeah, it's just like you can't ignore it any longer.
Mom, can I go play hockey? No.
No,
Oh.
son. Oh, that does not feel good. So I posted on my Instagram stories. I have a really thriving community of interesting people who are probably going to be the majority of the audience for this, but there were a couple questions that they asked. We can get into that and see if we stumble upon a tangent. But one was, what do men feel about women who are like aggressive, who pursue?
Yeah. Well, sometimes, so when I try to answer questions, typically I try to ask questions to the answers. Is is like, to answer that question is like, I can't speak for men, right? I can only speak
Yeah,
for
no,
myself.
yeah, that was something I wanted to be like a disclaimer. We're obviously having a conversation, and I'm not representing all women. I'm not representing all Black women. I'm
Right.
just representing like my experience and my lens of life. So I
Yes.
think, yeah, feel free to just speak from that. You don't have to feel responsible for everything.
I appreciate you alleviating my responsibility.
Just do you.
Yeah. So from my lens,
Hmm.
I think I really appreciate aggressive women and aggressive men, aggressive. I don't even know what that word means, really aggressive. I really appreciate people who know what they want
Yeah.
and also who are upfront and
Hmm.
also, parts of me also appreciate this idea of breaking out of old values,
Hmm.
that men are supposed to be this way, women are supposed to be that way. And I appreciate people that are trying to live from a different lens, not right or
Hmm.
wrong, but just pushing those boundaries. And quite frankly, in my experience with women, I would much rather have a well-versed woman in my life than one who isn't, because
Hmm.
I'm going to have a lot more fun with that person in my experience. And I
Yeah.
don't need to, is there a part of me that still comes up with a little bit of like jealousy and like, oh man, what have you done in the past? Yes, that's there. And I'm
Okay.
okay that that's there, because there's another part of me that is growing larger than that, which is we're human beings. And for
Hmm.
me, we're here to have experience and to explore. And I think women, in my experience, are just as sexual, just as powerful, just as beautiful, just as smart, just as heartfelt. I think men and women can be extremely equal in every way. And I want a powerful woman.
Hmm.
That to me is a very beautiful thing. And that's probably stems back to my childhood, right? I
Yeah.
grew up with a mom who was single, who came from a third world country, worked her way through that, now owns property, is retired, does really well. So
Hmm.
that is what's attracted to me, and was probably sexually aggressive. So I
Hmm.
saw that as a kid. So of course, for me, that is a beautiful thing.
Nice.
You switch that to another lens, and the guy who grew up with the mom who was a stay-at-home mom, in a very religious environment, sex was a no-no. That
Hmm.
that man and that woman are going to have a completely different past lens that are subconscious programming. And until each of us are willing to just dive into that to explore it, we'll be unaware of why we do what we do.
Hmm. It's so true. Good answer. I like it. Yeah. It's all about the lens and which through we perceive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's good to know, because I struggled with my own. I won't say I'm an aggressive woman, but I very much know what I want, and it's been a challenge, I feel like. So it's good to just hear diverse perspectives on how that can be perceived and like how that looks.
Yeah, and that challenge. I mean, for
Are you
one
ready
other
for it?
thing. one of the things is, for me, that challenge, for both of us is just pure BS. And what I mean by that is,
Mm-hmm.
a man being aggressive and having all kinds of women is no different than a woman being aggressive and having all kinds of men. There is absolutely no difference,
Yeah.
except for the social, cultural, inundated values that we've been raised with, which
Yeah. I mean,
are
that's a big,
sticky and take a lot of time
yeah.
to kind of shift our way out of if we want to.
I mean, exactly. You know, I was thinking about this conversation before we were talking, and I was thinking about my lens, as in, like, if I had glasses on and I just had like an extremely thick layer of like just stuff, and I couldn't even quite get in touch with my own truth, you know? And so many of us have that conditioning because of how we were raised. If we haven't started to question it, make conscious decisions against it, and then, you know, for better or for worse, we're semi getting brainwashed every day. So it's like good to just like wipe that lens off and be like, well, where do I stand? Where do I want, if I, you know, get really still and don't think about, oh, it's, you know, it's not right for women to act in this way, or men should always pursue and always like, yeah. Anyway, one person I had on here as a woman talking about the divine feminine, she was like, it's a total deal breaker if a man doesn't pay on the first date, like just total deal breaker. Like,
So I disagree with that in every sense of that word.
yeah. And now I can see your perspective, although I liked hearing that. I don't quite know how I feel about it, but I was just like, okay, cool. Yeah.
What's a deal breaker for me is not being willing to have the conversation about it. That's the deal breaker for me. The outcome is kind of irrelevant. Who pays? Are we both willing to have the conversation about my perspective, your perspective, and then meet and then move from that place?
Mm-hmm.
Rather than it being these rigid rules.
It's true. Yeah. Is that like a first date conversation? Like, let me break down to you how I feel about paying.
I don't know that I break it down, but let's have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can't even read my writing. What's the biggest secret? What's the biggest secret men want women to know?
The biggest secret that men want women to know. Oh.
Or maybe even just like a myth buster, but you said, oh, so that's got to be good.
Yeah, I think I got one.
Okay.
I think the biggest secret that men want women to know, and I would guess once I say this, 80% of men are going to say, no, that's not the secret. The secret is that the secret is that we are very, very soft, insecure, afraid, needy, and we're all still searching for our mommies.
Wow.
And until we can divorce from our mothers, we'll never be available for a woman.
You know, I would dare to say that if, well, first of all, I want to send all my exes to you, which really is just one. But I would dare to say that if people, I think that number would go up if people spent a lot of time in like self-analysis and really starting to look at their stories and look at how energy feels, and if they're recreating some old patterns. I think that number would go drastically up. I don't want to say 100% because, you know, there's always going to be people that resist, but I think it would be maybe like 80-20, you know, like the opposite. So that's extremely insightful. I feel like I've been to the Church of Jator today, and I've really enjoyed talking to you. If there's anything else, I have like a final question that I'm asking people, and we can sort of make it, I'll just ask it because some people like need a lot of clarification, which is fine. But the question I've been asking everybody is, what happens when we refuse to play by the rules? And, you know, maybe it could be the rules in like relationships, since that's what we've really been honing in on this conversation.
I really enjoy that question, partly because I have no idea what it means, which gives me a playful space to just go off the top of my head. Nice. So what happens when we don't play by the rules? That's a question?
Yeah.
For me, challenge change,
Mm.
tension, fear,
Mm.
closure, expanse, and questioning.
Nice. Well said. I like it. I like it a lot. Yeah, thank you so much for having this conversation. It feels like in some ways we just got started, and maybe there'll be a part 2 at some point. But yeah, just wanted to thank you for being willing to have this conversation and for the work that you do. And where can people find you if they want to work with you personally?
My website is wehlc, all one word.com. And then my YouTube channel is Explore with Jator on YouTube, which is slowly growing more hearts.
Nice. I like the way you put that. Thank you for tuning in, everybody, and we will see you next time.